Welcome to Outsider Gaming. I'm your host today, Paul, and I'm lucky enough to be joined by Chris Erb. Chris has oodles and oodles of experience in marketing and brand management. He is currently the founder of TripleClix, which is a marketing agency which kind of collaborates and joins forces with the likes of very popular brands and the gaming industry. Before this, Chris was the executive vice president for Legendary Entertainment in their brand marketing departments. And prior to that, he was the vice president of brand marketing for EA Sports. Currently, some of the popular kind of gaming industry giants that Chris works with are the likes of Blizzard and Xbox, but I'm sure nobody's ever heard of them. And when he has any spare time, which I'm sure he doesn't with all the things he does, he's also a master podcaster. So hopefully he can give me a few tips and pointers on how to get some brilliant guests because his list of guests is very impressive. But hello, welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me. You got most of that right. I don't know about the master part of the podcast, but thanks for having me. Excited to talk.
Delighted to have you. Delighted to have you. Yeah, so even to step that back a little bit, we're talking about your career sees very much marketing, 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 which is great. Like obviously, it's very, very focused.
One trick
Um,
pony.
no, well, I would say master. At this stage, you've mastered it. So, what led you from early days, working for other companies to eventually branching out on your own? And also, where does the gaming come into it? Like, why did you choose that niche?
Yeah, it's really about kind of, I grew up in a house where both my parents were executives, and I learned like do the things that you love. So when I graduated from the University of Washington, I liked video games. So how do you get a marketing career in the video games? Marketing always seemed like that was kind of my major in college, and wanted to get into that. So I lived in Seattle at the time. So we opened a store called GameWorks, which was an arcade, Steven Spielberg kind of big arcade thing. So that was my real first kind of foray into gaming. I got to work at GameWorks and was kind of the marketing manager for that, and had fun with that, and wanted to, as I thought about my career, how do I do multiple things? Part of it was venue based, part of it is brand based, part of it is advertising based. And so that was kind of my first kind of trick was the venue based kind of start at GameWorks, and then had the opportunity to go to a company called Wizards of the Coast, which was in Seattle. Went at a great time, helped launch Pokemon at the time, which was fun. Worked on Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, and so a really good kind of my first foray, if you will, into the brand side of the business. And so it just kind of grew from there, and that was really kind of the catalyst that got me started.
Wow, sounds pretty cool. So yeah, your passion for gaming is kind of what wanted you to see if you could earn a buck doing it. So going back to you're doing the live venues, the Steven Spielberg stuff. What was your game of choice, and what would you love to play?
In the arcades, it was probably the sports stuff. I played a lot of Blitz, a lot of, the shooter games, and kind of some of that stuff. I grew up in arcades, so like Gauntlet, and all those things back in the days. So I loved everything from that side. My first console was an Atari 2600. Like, I'm that old.
Nice.
So I got that first year it came out, and I've always kind of been a fan ever since. Huge, obviously, and everybody in our generation, Nintendo was huge,
Yeah.
and then Sega and the Sega CD even, and playing off that stuff. And then there was a console called the 3DO, which was unbelievable just from a graphics perspective, playing a lot of Road Rash and kind of fun games on that system. So have kind of owned almost every console that goes through it, just because, you kind of get addicted. So a little bit of everything. I don't think I was a huge sports fan. And in Seattle in the 70s and 80s, the Seahawks and Mariners sucked. So I had to win all the championships on the field myself. So played a lot of sports games, but then, Grand Theft Auto was huge on PC, just the top-down version. I
Yep.
think I started with probably two from the top down. That was probably my first foray into it. I remember going to E3 that year where they actually debuted Grand Theft Auto 3, and nobody was playing it. It was in this little back area of the hall.
Wow.
And I was like, I wanted to play it because I liked the top down. And when I saw it, it kind of like, it was a completely different game, and it kind of blew my
Yeah.
mind. So I have been there since kind of day one, and fun to see that, but try and play a little bit of everything, and kind of dabble in everything.
I'm gonna show my age because you mentioned GTA. Like, in our secondary school, we had a computer lab, so lots of PCs. Now they weren't very good PCs, but somebody had managed to bring in GTA on a disc and had installed it on every single computer. So anytime a teacher wasn't present, you're like
Yeah.
playing away. Is one of my favorite games growing up. Yeah, and then yeah, it completely revolutionized when it went 3D and became a beast.
Yeah.
But
It
yeah,
was so fun top down. You didn't,
yeah,
I was like, you don't need to change it. I don't need the 3D. This is amazing. And then you're like, oh, all right. I see what you did. Like that's,
it's kind of
yeah,
works.
it was decent. So
Yeah, and I think the second game was kind of futuristic, wasn't it? It wasn't the same as the first. And I remember there was a London one as well. It was like an expansion. But yeah, I
yeah,
loved them. Played them all.
cities were
Played
always different. Change the, must have been easy just to change the map and move stuff around. And
them. Color the sprites in differently, and it's fine.
yeah, said the guy who didn't build it. So it seemed easy.
Absolutely. Speaking of Rockstar, you've actually, I know from your podcast, you've interviewed Mark Fernandez. He used to work with Rockstar Games, did he not? Did you get any crazy insights into how games were made back then, or did he get to work on any of the GTAs?
Yeah, I think he did. I think he managed, if I remember correctly. I think Mark worked on the music side of it and kind of did a
Mm.
lot of the music licensing for that stuff. And totally good story on my podcast about driving around New York City in a Porsche, smoking weed, and just listening to music to feel like what is the music that would kind of fit in the game. And so I think
Ah,
he did it with some of the founders, and they just drive around and see like what are they feeling, and
yeah.
just what was working. And I think that's how they were kind of picking music. It was funny. I became friends with Mark just from the gaming space, but really from Mark Echo. He was Mark Echo's right hand, so was a big Mark Echo fan. I actually saw Mark at ComplexCon this weekend. So they were like just a fun collab, and he was Mark Fernandez was always kind of in the gaming stuff, and when Mark did Echo did Get Up and all
Get
those
up, yeah.
things. Yeah, it was amazing kind of thing. I was running at the time. I was running the Madden franchise, and we used to go to I used to bring him up to the draft every year and kind of hang out
Wow.
at it and kind of tell good stories. So it's good people, but it's always fun to be. I had a friend named Nathan that also worked at Rockstar and
Yeah.
worked on the Midnight Run or the Midnight Club and some of those fun
Oh,
games
yes.
there as well. So a lot of good stories out of those buildings.
That was one of the first games, I think, on PlayStation 2.
Yeah,
Was it 2?
the
Yeah.
driving.
Wow.
Yeah, one of the driving ones. Yeah,
Very good.
Los
Very good.
Angeles, trying to make off Los Angeles as authentic as possible.
Nice. Tell me a bit about Madden because you upgraded your life just to go work on Madden. Is that right?
Yeah, I was running. So I was at Wizards. I ran. There's Wizards had a ton of brands. I was working on everything from Duel Masters to Neopets to Dungeons and Dragons. We had a book division. So I
Hmm,
actually worked on Wheel of Time with Robert Jordan and brought that stuff into
nice.
the fold. And got a call. A friend of mine that had worked at Wizards named Tom Getty had left and went to Electronic Arts. And I was like, oh, video games would be awesome because it was very tabletop and card games. And
Yeah.
I probably bugged Tom for a year. And finally, there was an opening, and they brought me down, and I interviewed to run the Madden franchise specifically. So yeah, I took over the franchise, I think in 2004, 2005,
Mhm.
and spent a decade in Florida. Obviously, when you get a call, you want to work on the Madden franchise, which is iconic in the sports space. So spent 10 years getting to work on that stuff, which is amazing. All of the franchises I had the first 5 years I worked specifically kind of on the P&L and managed the Madden franchise, and then the next
Hmm.
5 years I kind of took over the rest of just the EA Sports brand and started building out
Wow.
the brand and doing a lot of those collabs.
Yeah, I know. Like for us, FIFA is huge. Um, and anywhere in Europe, anywhere UK based, I
Yeah.
think FIFA is huge. Whereas maybe in the States, it's Madden, isn't it? That's
At
the
the
bigger of the
time,
two.
yeah, I love FIFA, and there's a guy named Matt Bilby who's still at EA who was amazing. He ran the FIFA franchise, so we were very close. And I'd send him a jersey from the cover of Madden, and he'd send me a Messi jersey or something like that. I stayed connected because I
Yeah.
love that. At the time, I think in the US, I think Madden was just the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
I think the FIFA numbers were big, but the Madden was just so much bigger here. But I think if I look at the numbers now, I'm sure FIFA kind of caught it in the US. Like I think the FIFA, the game is so big. that it's probably right same size as the Madden franchise. And I remember a lot of the NFL players, Chad Johnson, like all those guys were playing FIFA anyways. Like those guys,
Yeah.
all the athletes loved FIFA. So it was a super fun franchise, but it was at EA at the time. It was, college football and Tiger Woods and NASCAR. And we had a really good lineup of a ton of fun games that, kind of really cross-pollinated and really built that brand pretty strong.
Sounds amazing. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of taking it back a little to TripleClix, obviously. So, you're big into your games. You've massive connections in the gaming world. You've straight going through EA, going through all these different gaming companies and meeting all these different people over the years. What's the elevator pitch? So if I let's say I'm Coca-Cola and I want, why would I want to be, working with games?
Sure. Let me take one step back. I started the agent, so I left EA and I moved to LA. I had twin boys and I wanted to live. I'm more of a West Coast guy. So I was like, I want to come West. And so I took a job at Legendary Pictures and I was the head of theatrical. And the first thing I noticed was when I was at Wizards and I was at EA, there's no like marketing agencies that could help me. Like we literally had to, my team, we always had to do everything ourselves and kind of build that stuff up. As soon as I get to Legendary, there's like 10,000 agencies that do movie promotions. And it was just kind of a light bulb, like the gaming industry needs all this. So I had a good run there but really wanted to kind of get back into gaming. And so I started TripleClix just based on the idea of like, how do I help companies do all the stuff that I was doing at Wizards and EA and build it out? So our TripleClix is two kind of sides of the business. The first side is helping publishers and games market the game. So we work closely with Activision, Xbox, PUBG, Crafton, Epic, all the fun games. But the other side of the business is really helping brands authentically come into gaming. So to the Coca-Cola question, if you look at the size and scale of gaming, about 2/3 of the US population consider themselves gamers. The gaming industry globally is about $185 billion. It's bigger than the global theatrical business, the global TV streaming business, and all of North American sports combined. Games are bigger, right? So if you want to talk to like 98% of Gen Z plays video games, 100% of alphas play video games, probably 94% of millennials play video games. If you want to have authentic conversations with these audiences, gaming is the platform to do it. But you have to do it right. This is just a different, this is a different audience. It's not a movie audience. Most of the theatrical programs I worked on, Pacific Rim and Godzilla and some of those, and you can just kind of, hey, go see our movie and do a Snickers deal or a Doritos deal and just put the movie on the bag. But it's gone in 2 weeks, right? And it's a quick hit. Gaming, like Fortnite, I think Fortnite's still in beta. Like if you log in that on that game for 4 years. So that like it's like my kids, all they do is play Fortnite and they've been playing it for 3 years. And so like the game is around. And so if you want to have kind of get into these things, instead of doing movies, which is this really small window, how do you do something authentic that kind of hits this audience the right way? So we tell brands, hey, if you're going to do this, you have to do it the right way. What are you adding to the culture? Not what are you taking away from it? Don't come in and market things. How do you kind of build a relationship with them? Because I think there's two ways from a marketing perspective. You could market to people or you could build a direct relationship with people. I don't think either one's wrong. I just think it's a different path. And so if you want to build relationships with these audiences, you have to give value and you have to do things that make their experiences better. And so how do we help brands start to figure out the best way to kind of go down that path as opposed to just marketing it? I think about sports as a good comp. If I was launching a beer company, I would build a beer. I'd think about my retail distribution. I'd think about my marketing, and then I'd go to ESPN and I'd buy a bunch of advertising and I'd market my thing. Some brands are like, okay, let's just buy Twitch. And it's kind of backwards, right? You just don't go buy the media and then, okay, what are we going to do? Which is what a lot of brands do, is just kind of come in and just kind of, hey, everybody yell Fruit Loops and we'll do some stuff, right? How do you have a more authentic experience of it? How do you have Pringles make suspicious stew flavored Pringles, right? And then you can do something authentically within the space. And then you can have Mr. Beast come in and tell your story. But you have to build something that the fans will appreciate and love, or at least kind of laugh at or nod at, or just something that's kind of authentic, engaging, and then build the programs around it. And so that's what we try and help brands do, is kind of have a better space in gaming, and how do you have a more authentic relationship with gamers.
Yeah. And is it a blank canvas, or will they come to you with certain ideas or certain, limits to what they're willing to say yes to?
Yeah, it's different with every single brand. I think there's some brands will be like, I don't know how to do gaming. What should we do? And so
Yeah.
that's a very long, like, what's the overall brand strategy? What are you guys trying to do for the next 5 or 10 years? How do we authentically kind of plug that into the gaming space? Swarovski's probably a really good example of that. I hadn't been in the gaming space, and in the US, Swarovski's probably a little bit different than it is, globally. It's kind of a premium, elevated brand in the US. They have retail stores. So it may be your mom or your grandma's brand. So how do we kind of bring that in authentically to gaming? And they're all about anniversaries and awards and stuff like that. So for the 20th anniversary of Halo, we made Swarovski Halo Master Chief helmets,
Cool.
and swords. And we actually didn't sell them, like, we made a certain amount of those helmets, what Master Chief wears on his uniform, and 117, and kind of built that out. And we kind of start to like get people to think about it. And then we followed up, and Swarovski has built Epic's Fortnite championship trophy for the last couple of years. So like the trophy
Okay.
is
Yeah.
actually made by Swarovski. So again, authentic in this space. But then there's, you'll do a program with a Rockstar energy drinks or Doritos or Mountain Dew, and then it's kind of, how are you giving value instead of buying content within the game? Fortnite makes what, $1 billion every 60 days from
Yeah.
people buying microtransactions. Instead of getting you to spend your money on those, how do I get that content that I love on products that I buy?
Mhm.
So if you buy a Kellogg's program, you're getting mine coins for Minecraft. Or if you
Yeah.
go buy right now on Doritos, there's 6 different bags from all the different games on Xbox, and there's a piece of content for each of those games that you can kind of buy.
Gotcha.
So giving value back, and again, adding to the culture instead of kind of taking away. And so you don't see a lot of movie promotions giving value when they're on bags. From a gaming perspective, and from our thing, is like, hey, what are we rewarding people with for making this purchase, and giving that value?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think you've mentioned like the movies and TV and stuff, and games are unique because they're not passive. You watch a movie, it's 90 minutes, 2 hours, and it's gone. If you're
Yeah.
play a game, as you mentioned, you could be playing Fortnite for years, but even a single player game, you're going to pump 100 hours into Elden Ring and stuff like that. So it makes more sense that that's interactive. They're invested, they're playing that thing, and then to be able to get something from that, from
Yeah.
Pringles or from Doritos or from whoever it is.
It's
Um,
what Yeah, it's what we
could
try and tell the brands, is like, you may love a movie that's coming out, but you're going to spend 2 hours in the theater, and then you're going to come home and spend 200 hours in a game, right? And
yeah,
Elden, great example of it, right? So these IPs in these worlds are much more closer to the heart, to the audiences, than the films are, right? Like, I loved Andor, but I don't get to play and live in Andor's world,
yeah,
right? But I
yeah,
do in these worlds, and I can explore and do all these things. And so if you want to have that more authentic connection with this consumer, it's, celebrate the worlds that you want. Part of the challenge is always, and the brands that we work with have been really good about it, but like, some brands want to show up in the game, right? In the universe. Like, you want Master Chief
Mhm.
to drink a Mountain Dew. Like, that's not really, like, yeah, it's definitely a 90s trope of making your brand show up in the game. What people love is, they love the games more than they love your brand. And so how do
Mhm.
the games show up on your brand? And that's the thing that gets people excited,
Yeah,
rather than having your brand disrupt their experience in game. So we fight very hard about not putting brands in game, but putting games on brands, because I think that's what the consumer loves more. And so
yeah,
it's an interesting conversation to try and get brands to kind of be kind of collaborative. I think it makes sports in sense in sports. Like, if I play as the Seahawks, or if you played in Manchester United, you have certain kind of signage in the stadium already. It's fine to put those authentic brands, and then the brands in the games make sense
mhm,
because it adds to the experience. If you're playing Midnight Club and you're driving around Los Angeles, you want to see certain landmark
yeah,
stores or retailers and that stuff. So there's moments where it makes a ton of sense. And then there's times where it's very disruptive, and you don't want to
mhm,
do that. And so I think it's kind of threading that needle around whether the brand should be in the game, or whether we should do things outside of the game that could be fun.